All right. The next lecture, video 7, I think we're on, I've called it Music Around World Wars, or music that arises around both of the world wars. World War I, let's not do that again. World War I and World War II. The reason I'm putting them in at this point is because they don't necessarily fall into postmodernism, and they don't necessarily belong to Second Viennese School Expressionism or High Modernism, but these 4 pieces that I'm going to mention are actually really famous ones, and so the repertoire is good for us to know. But if you're going to know the repertoire, you need to know what's the context. So I think it's a good example of music history giving us more context about pieces that we already may love. So I'm going to talk about Carl Orff first, and then I'll move to Copland. Carl Orff, a German composer. We'll get there in just a second. Remember the sweeping use that the Soviet realists made of the arts? They used them for propaganda, for bringing the people together and getting everybody to sort of follow the same ideology. Well, the Soviets weren't alone. They weren't the only people using the arts that way. All kinds of music and arts were used as both soft and hard propaganda during World War II. Cartoons, for example, Bugs Bunny cartoons, are used, the characters are used to make training animations of how to put together guns and tanks and things. But they're also used as really hard propaganda, making fun of the Germans and the Japanese during the conflict. And in fact, then they're shown to prisoners of war, German and Japanese prisoners of war, during the conflict, which is really kind of yucky when you think about it. So on the one hand, animation is used in a sort of soft propaganda, like Daffy Duck joining up the Air Force and being a flyer for the Air Force and saying, let's get it done, we can do it. And then also these really bitter sort of satires on these enemies, these other people. You could say the same about popular song. For example, the swing tune, Praise the Lord and Pass the Ammunition. Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition, and we'll all be free. So it's a swing tune, it's catchy, you're supposed to dance to it, and it's sort of like, yeah, come on, let's all get along and do this thing. Let's do our wartime duty. But there's also music that is used in a very hard propaganda sort of way. So, big surprise. Maybe not. If you're interested in that, I've certainly got units from my humanities classes that talk about these very things. So I can give you examples of this use of the arts as propaganda on both sides of the conflict in World War II and leading up to World War II. So as I say, the first is Carl Orff, and we're going to look at the Carmina Burana. The Carmina Burana are an orchestral and sung suite. The texts come from medieval, not church Latin, but medieval secular Latin texts. Things that monks wrote down when they weren't thinking about being monks, like drinking songs, girls, guys, as a matter of fact, sort of sensual kinds of things. So Carl Orff chose these old medieval texts. There's that looking back to the past, and he sets them in these really exuberant, big choir, high, low soloists, big orchestra. It's super colorful. He paid attention in orchestration class, learned a lot from Richard Strauss and Hector Berlioz. Super colorful. It uses not only sort of singable, repeating melodies that sound kind of familiar, romantic-y, happy melodies, but it also makes use occasionally of the same kind of lopsided, asymmetrical rhythms that we would have seen in, say, Bartók at the same time period, writing in the neoclassical style. So we get the modern interpretation of older things. Let me turn on this light because it's getting dark. Oh, there we go. That may help or not. So he writes this suite, and it is really, in a lot of ways, the sort of newest version of the new German school, the Zukunftsmusik, that we started all the way back in the 1870s. This is the latest version. My favorite horn sonata composer, Karl Pils, is writing in the same Zukunftsmusik style, but they've done it now, gosh, since 1870, and now it's the 1940s. So they've done it for 70 or 80 years. It's gotten super, super intense and super over intense, maybe. This suits Germany going into World War II. Germany's plan, the Nazi vision for Germany, was to first annex or take in Austria, called the Anschluss, the gathering in of Austria, so the Germanic peoples are united. And then Hitler begins to extend that to taking over Europe and eventually anywhere else that I think he could have managed to do it. The idea is to recreate the 1,000-year reign of Rome, which before Constantine and the fall of Rome, the Huns, and before Christianity sort of took over in the modern era, ancient Rome existed for 1,000 years. That was what Hitler was trying to imitate. And who should be in charge of the 1,000-year rule of this new party? Well, the master race. The race typified by the hero Siegfried, remember, who broke all the rules and discarded the old morality and said, I, in and of myself, am sufficient to be going forward. So the Aryan Germanic master race, free from societal rules. This suite of Carmina Burana, we could call it maximal. It's big everything, big orchestra, lots of choir. How many have you heard the O Fortuna reinterpretation of these Latin words into words that sound vaguely like English or something? As I say, it relied on old medieval German secular texts. There is a sort of sensual, decadent enjoyment of sensual things like eating and drinking and falling in love. It's not impressionism, because we don't care about the impressions of our senses. We're going to tell you how great this beer is and how great it is to fall in love. That opening chorus, O Fortuna, O Fortune, velut luna, just like the moon. Ooh, moon, pure lunaire, the moon changes. Our fortunes change just like the moon. Sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down. Sometimes good things happen and sometimes bad things happen. It's really kind of a fatalistic view. Like, that's life. That's how fortune works. Good fortune, bad fortune. It's the wheel's gonna roll around. It's a little bit scary when it's sort of proclaimed by a whole orchestra and chorus. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Carmina Burana. It is fantastic. When I was an undergrad, we did it in the St. Olaf Band, and we actually, because it was St. Olaf, we actually sang the chorus parts while we were sitting there playing instruments as well. So sometimes you sang and sometimes you played. We did it all. It was great. We love Carmina Burana. It is entertaining. It is meant to be entertaining. It's not meant to be particularly elitist like a modernist piece, but it does kind of have this new German school agenda. Come along with us, wave your beer stein, and come along and join the crowd. It is especially colorful because of its orchestration. The instrumental movement that I asked you to listen to, auf dem Anger, does not mean on the angry. It means on the lawn. It is a dance. It's meant to sound like an old Renaissance dance, like the kinds of Renaissance dances I like to recreate. Oh great, we just play it and we dance these cool things and we're all in our fancy Renaissance garb. It's meant to sound like that, except it has fantastically modern post-Rite of Spring rhythms. Bum 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 bum. It mixes simple and compound subdivisions in a fantastically fluid way. The other thing rhythmically that it has is ba 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 ba. Can you tell I'm clapping offbeats? Ba 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 ba. But then the offbeats actually, they just keep going. And pretty soon, because of the meter changes, they're back on the beat. And then later, I'm off the beat. But these haven't stopped. That kind of intense rhythmic layering without regard to a bar line, that's 20th century. That's not your old 19th century stuff. Ooh, that's great. But listen closely, as I say, to the hedonism of the first movement, O Fortuna, and even to the movement, the drinking song, where everybody is yelling, Wafna, 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 which is like, yay, raise your glass. Are we shouting, yay, raise your glass? Or in the context, do we think maybe these people are shouting, Heil, Heil, Heil? Because that is part of the sort of gathering of people to go to war. You've got to make people want to do it and think that this is right, we're all together. I remember when my music history teacher told us that, and I was thinking, oh no, you've just ruined Carmina Burana for the rest of my life. It's one of those things we have to think about. Here are style characteristics for Carmina. Large scale everything. Large scale instrumentation, large scale chorus. It is a big work. That's what unifies it, is its bigness. It is maximal. Number 2, it's tonal, with accessible melodies and harmonies. Now, normally that wouldn't be a good style characteristic, but in this case, surrounded by modernism and expressionism, that's actually important. It is tonal and accessible. It is meant to be enjoyed by everybody that hears it. Number 3, there is a reliance on the old medieval texts, dance movement that sounds like sort of a Renaissance dance interpreted by modern ears. Let's enjoy these old things because that reminds us, yeah, we're all this old people. We've been around for 1,000 years. We'll be around for 1,000 more. 4th style characteristic, the modern metrical and counterpoint complexity. I should just say there is. So we hear in it modern metrical complexity of meters, and we hear modern counterpoint, not the old species counterpoint, not the 18th century Bach counterpoint, but a new 20th century counterpoint that uses the perfect fourth as consonants, that is slightly careless about dissonance. Those are our 4 style characteristics. Now, compare that. Another favorite. Take Orff and Copland. Orff and Copland, who writes music that we say, gosh, that's America. That sounds like America. We use it for beef commercials. If you haven't heard the beef commercial, somebody will play it for you, I'm sure. You can Google it right now. So we're listening here. I'm going to talk in this case about Copland's Fanfare for the Common Man. Copland learned first as a composer how to write high modernist music. When he was studying with people like Nadia Boulanger in Paris, he learned to write the way that everybody was writing in this high modernist Bartok Stravinsky style, this elitist push them away style. But he recognized that this was not a popular style. He recognized the elitism in high modernist music. He thought he could compose in a way that would reflect America. Remember, America has had a real hard time, the United States, has had a hard time finding music that reflects itself. Because there's a reluctance to take on jazz music, which is perceived as sexy, immoral music. There's a reluctance to use indigenous American, Native American music because we don't want to admit that these people even exist or had anything of value in culture. We are reluctant as a country to use African American spirituals as music of our own because of this embedded belief of the inequality of different kinds of people. So in a way, we're searching for our own Zukunftsmusik, our own music of the future, and we're having a really hard time settling down on it. There are some cases to be made that we find American music in several ways in the 20th century, and I think they're pretty accurate. So Copland says, I can do it. I can write music that everybody will say, yeah, that's the United States. A little bit like the Kushka. Remember the Mighty Handful? Who were writing music that they said, this is what Russian music is. And they kind of made it up. This is what Russian music is. And everybody said, oh, is that it? Okay, great. So Copland invents a musical style, and this invented style ends up being the one that people say, yeah, yeah, that's American music. We're going to do it like that. People like John Williams will copy this on purpose when writing music for the Olympics, for example, or the Midway March that John Williams, when he writes for the movie Midway, he's going to imitate this style because it becomes instantly iconic. Here it is. Copland's melodic and harmonic content was simple. Fourths and fifths, played one after another. Bum, bum, bum. Sorry, that wasn't a fourth or a fifth. Anyway, a little bit like the beginning of Star Trek, for example. You take perfect fourths and fifths and you stack them. You say, gosh, that sounds a bit like quartal harmony from the Impressionists. Well, sure, Copland studied with French people who had just being done with Impressionism. He knew what this content was. So he says, you can take fourths or fifths and stack them, and this evokes the open prairie. You can do it melodically, or if you play them, fifth, maybe a cluster of fourth in there, you leave out the thirds, and it sounds like a very clean, fresh sonority, like the prairie. With the wind blowing across the crisp prairie grass, and you breathe it in, and you think, yeah, this is healthy. This is manifest destiny. The prairie wagons are rolling onward. It's a very invigorating and simple set of harmonic and melodic intervals. It evokes the prairie in a sort of mythical image of the West. Already, we don't even have 50 states yet at this point, and the West is relatively newly settled. Isn't that weird to think of? The Midwest and the Western states are still very underpopulated. There's no highway system. Well, there's no highway system yet. There is a railway system. But we're already in the 20s and teens and 30s looking back and saying, oh, those simple days when cowboys just could ride free across the prairie and didn't have to be hemmed in by rules and cities and pollution and stuff. When you could just be anybody, you could pull yourself up by your bootstraps and be anybody. Now, is this realistic? Was everybody that way? Everybody was a cowboy? No. Well, there were farmers. Have your own farm. Live off the land. Make your own food. In the 1920s and 30s, we're heading for a Dust Bowl depression where the ground dries up and blows into the air. So we're looking back at this semi-mythical with nostalgia. Back when everybody could be anybody. Everybody? Really? Could everybody in the West be everybody? No. But we look back. That's what memory does for us. We look back and say, oh, how about that? Simplicity. The right is right, the wrong is wrong. But listen to the fanfare. How about those big crashing chords? There is simple melodic fourths and fifths, and it opens with the trumpets, and then it's echoed, it's sort of canonically passed through trumpets, horns, and trombones. But listen to those big crashing chords. Doesn't that sound a little bit like Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony? Let's impress you with how big this is. How about that major tonality? It's super major. Wow, is it major? Is it too major? Is it a little bit trying to sell us on it? Maybe. Now, this is the fanfare for the common man. Think about fanfares in the Renaissance. They're for the nobility, the king. Copland says, I'm going to write a fanfare for the common man. Roll up your sleeves, get it done. Dirt on your fingers. Okay, we're going to get it done. Great. But is this a fanfare for the individual? Or is this a fanfare for everyone who is surrounded by trumpets, horns, and trombones? It's a lot like a big group of people that all need to move the same way. Are we all equal? Okay. But do we have an individual voice? Maybe yes, maybe no. Style characteristics for Copland. I have 4 of them for you. 1, a tonal palette that relies on perfect fourths and fifths to create an open sound. A tonal palette that relies on fourths and fifths to create an open sound. Number 2, diatonicism, used as familiar reassurance. Number 3, modern innovations of rhythm and counterpoint. Gosh, that style characteristic was just in Carl Orff. Yes, same style characteristic. Opposite sides politically, I guess, on different sides in the soon-to-be war. Modern innovations of rhythm and counterpoint, yep. Fourth, connection through explicit and implicit program to the common people. I'll say it again and then I'll explain it. Connection through explicit and implicit program to the common people. Here I'm thinking of not only the fanfare for the common man, that sort of tells you, hey, common people, this is a fanfare for you. It's right there in the title. That's explicit. Implicit would be in, say, Billy the Kid. When we're hearing cowboy music, we're hearing fiddling music that isn't actually fiddling music, but it sounds like good old fiddling square dance kinds of sounds. We're hearing cowboy dances. We're hearing how they would thump their boots and dance around. If we had to listen to Appalachian Spring, movements from that ballet, by the way, Billy the Kid is a ballet, in case you weren't sure. Appalachian Spring is also a ballet, and it uses the shaker tune, "'Tis a Gift to be Simple." So it's a folk tune. It's a folk tune of a specific people who in American history were a religious cult who were into doing things for themselves and living a clean and simple, uncomplicated modern life. So he's evoking this connection to the common people, not to the fancy people in Boston with their fancy art concerts, but to the people who are out there apparently doing the work. So that's Copland.